we live in an intelligent universe where life is always responding to our thoughts and our energy and emotions, constantly. So yeah, I think it's really important for all of us to take radical responsibility and start consciously working with those universal laws.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my show. I am your host, Nimai Delgado, and today is going to be a very special episode where we have a friend of mine. He is quite an amazing individual. He's also someone that I look up to, somebody that I deeply, deeply respect as far as his information, his wisdom, his insight, and he's personally helped guide me in times of darkness and help shine a light on areas of myself that I didn't know existed and didn't know how to work through. So I am extremely grateful to have Lukis Mac on the show. He is a breathwork facilitator. He's hosted retreats all over the world and helped facilitate breathwork workshops for thousands. I can say thousands at this point.
Yeah.
Yes. He's also working with some incredibly influential individuals, and we'll get into that. But Lukis, man, I just want to say I'm so excited for this podcast, bro. Like, we haven't seen each other in a few months now, and you've been off traveling the world doing some incredible work, and I'm excited to hear about it.
Thanks, bro. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you for having me here. For me, it's just a blessing to be here, Same for me. I look up to you, everything that you're doing in the world. It's super inspirational. So I'm just grateful to be here and have this conversation.
And I want to share how we met too, because this is a interesting story. I was hosting a retreat in Ubud in Bali. It was a vegan fitness retreat. I don't know what year it was, maybe 2019. And we had just left Ubud, and I went to Canggu and get a message from somebody, and I check my DM, and it's a voice message. And I'm like, oh man, here's this person. I don't normally listen to voice messages. If I get random DMs from people, I'm like, this guy's probably just going to be, I just expected the worst.
Yeah.
And I listened to it, and it was such a genuine, authentic message that I've never received before. And you were just like, hey man, like, I'm not going to try to do your accent, but like, hey man, I love what you're doing in the world. I would love to be of service and help you in any way possible. And I would just love to connect with you. And it felt so real and so authentic that I was like, man, I gotta see what this guy's about. And I gotta meet him. And a couple of years later, we ran into each other at Gold's Gym. I was actually leaving Canggu that day, so we didn't get to connect.
Yep.
And then we ran into each other outside of Gold's Gym when you were in Venice.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then we connected in person.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah, I actually lived in Ubud for 3 years. That was home for a while. So yeah, when I saw you were posting out there and doing your thing, I was like, we got to connect. So I'd already watched a lot of your interviews before that. So I was very aware of what you're doing and your movement. And I was inspired by it. So for me, it was just natural. And I think that day that I messaged you, I had watched one of your, I think you were speaking on some stage, and it was like such a powerful speech. And afterwards, I was just like, boom, had to connect.
Well, man, you're like a master manifester. And we can get into that too, because there's so many things so many directions I want to take this conversation. But I think it's important to start at your origins. And I know you've got a very powerful story, and I would love for the audience to get to know you more on a personal level and just understand how you ended up on this path of helping bring light to the world.
Yeah, I guess it started first. Well, I grew up in New Zealand, and I was a really sensitive kid. So I could sense everyone's, thoughts and feelings and emotions. A lot of the stuff that wasn't being said, I could pick up on. So growing up in an environment as a sensitive kid, I was always taking on board other people's emotions and processing them as mine. I didn't know the difference between what was mine and what wasn't. So my mum was really supportive for me growing up. She was always like, you can do anything, chase your dreams, really loving and supportive. She was into spirituality and crystals and healing. So I remember there was lots of different books on the bookshelves to do with metaphysical stuff. And she was a big inspiration for me. She'd always put different affirmations around the house, like I can do it. I am abundant. I am worthy. So growing
Mm.
up, I had that influence in my life. And then he was more of a free spirit. He grew marijuana, which was illegal in New Zealand, rode motorcycles, and he was a bit of a rebel. He did his own thing. He was super supportive to me and really loving as well. But like most men, he struggled with processing his emotions. He didn't know how to feel his emotions in a healthy way. So for him, it was a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of violence too. So when I was growing up, there was kind of like this polarity between mum and dad. And dad struggled a lot. And when I was 10 years old, he actually committed suicide. He shot himself in his stomach. And that's when things got really interesting for me because I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know how to process dad's death. One minute he was here, one minute he wasn't. And even though my dad was quite violent, that violence was never turned on me. So my dad represented safety to me. So when he was gone, it was like that safety left me. So I felt really vulnerable. I felt abandoned. I felt confused. And I didn't actually know how to access my emotions. I remember being at his funeral and not knowing how to cry, just feeling overwhelmed and almost like I was disassociated, like a part of me had kind of left my body and just, yeah, feeling very overwhelmed with everything and not knowing how to cope with it. And I think one of the ways I did cope with it was food. And we talked about this when we came in. I was drinking some green juice and you were like,
Mm.
we were talking about the green juice. But for me, it was emotional eating. I really found emotional eating was a way of escaping and a way of coping and self-soothing, um, which led me quite down a destructive path. So that was my beginning early years. And then from that, there was a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety.
Mm.
And I didn't really know how to process my own emotions or how to feel about certain situations that were happening to me in childhood. Um, and again, I use food to cope in
Mm.
those situations. So I could go on and on and on, but
Yeah,
that's kind of the
no.
beginning stages,
Wow.
just growing up super sensitive and feeling quite overwhelmed and not knowing how to process emotions.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that,
Mm.
brother. I resonate with much of your story. We've spoken before in the
Yeah.
past, and my family also has a history with suicide. My grandmother took her life
Yeah.
whenever my mom was pregnant with me, so my mother had to process that trauma
Yeah. Yeah.
when I was in her womb,
Yeah.
and also feel like I have a deep association with suicide.
Yeah.
Just
Same.
growing up in an environment where that was also prevalent in my childhood too,
Yeah.
and it it's an interesting thing to be a witness to,
Yeah.
um,
It's heavy.
because at that age you don't know how to process what's going on around you, and
Mm.
although you mentally you don't know how to make sense of what's going on experientially and in your body, you feel everything,
Mm.
and like you said, a way to cope with this is to dissociate or numb or distract or push away
Yep.
and or keep everything at a distance, and that becomes the template and the lens in which we experience life
Totally.
moving forward.
Yeah.
um so I just want to say, like, thank you for sharing that,
Mm.
and I would love to hear more about how you began to uncover these realizations that you were separating yourself from your emotions and not processing or not emoting in
Mm.
any kind of way, and how that showed up in your life or your teenage years or
Yeah.
young adulthood.
Yeah. It showed up from a really young age. Like I'd say from as young as I can remember, I was starting to have a lot of supernatural experiences too, which I couldn't understand at the time, which later I would process and delve into. Um, Meeting with different like spirits and beings and stuff like that, and not having any information or reference point for it, and also not talking about it to anyone. But being open to it through the books and things that I was reading and seeing. But later it turned into like a lot of anxiety, so a lot of panic attacks, and at the time,
Mhm,
I didn't really know what panic attacks were, but all I could remember was I couldn't breathe, and I
mhm,
remember mum rushing me to, like, the hospital and the doctors hooking me up to, like, the breathing ventilator machines until I could breathe again, and they didn't really know what it was. They thought it was asthma, but as I kept going down that path as a kid, I just realized that I was extremely overwhelmed And there was a lot of stuff that I had stuffed down and I wasn't giving myself permission to feel it. And I didn't know how to access it. And it felt so overwhelming and terrifying to me that I would use food. And I also used drawing too. I'd draw a lot as a kid from a young age. And I think that was a way that I could process my thoughts and feelings through drawing. It was almost like an act of meditation, you know?
Mm.
Um, so I think the first stages was becoming aware that I was extremely overwhelmed and that I was extremely sensitive and I was processing everyone else's emotions and I wasn't necessarily processing mine. I was kind of stuffing them down or escaping or disassociating. So I just became aware of that. And then I think that led into, yeah, just knowing that I had to create a shift in my life because it was leading me down a very self destructive path.
I want to get into this a little bit deeper because what you're speaking of is kind of like your own exploring your own darkness, right?
Yeah,
Exploring
most
the parts of
definitely.
yourself that
Yeah.
you keep in the dark because it's too heavy.
Yeah.
It's too sensitive. The
Yeah.
wound is still there, and it's easier to look away than to shine a light on it.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of courage
Mm,
to start exploring that
yeah.
because you don't know what's going to come up a lot
Yeah.
of the time. And for me personally, I didn't look at my own darkness, so to speak,
Mm,
until I was much older, like a couple years ago,
mm,
and have the courage, or it wasn't even necessarily the courage, it was more of a slap in the face. It was like, I
yeah.
have to do something about this. Like, I can't keep finding myself in this position and self sabotaging or self destructing
Yeah.
in a way. So, was there a moment like that for you, or was it more just over time? You're like, you know what, it's time.
Well, I realized that I was self destructing quite early on, like, 10, 11 years old, looking in the mirror and saying a lot of really negative things to myself, having a lot of self hatred that I was directing towards myself and just lowering my vibration and just feeling like I was just constantly beating myself up. So there would be like this polarity between affirmations around me that mum would put up to the way that I would perceive myself and look in the mirror and just have this really self destructive tone
Hmm.
towards myself. And yeah, that led down a really destructive path as a teenager. And it got to a point where I realized I was exactly where my father was. And there was a massive part of me that didn't want to be on this planet. So I had to make a choice at that point, like, either take myself out or, a lot of my friends had committed suicide at that point too. And a lot of my other friends had joined gangs. So it was really a choice point in my life. And I didn't want to hurt my mum. I think that was one of the biggest reasons that kind of led me down the path of, working with different healers and therapists was I didn't want to repeat the cycle of trauma and hurt my mum. So I chose to go inward and start looking at all of that darkness. And like you said, it takes courage because we can be so afraid of the unknown and what's there. And it takes courage to go within and face that darkness. And for me, it was a really terrifying journey, but at the same time, really liberating because as I allowed myself to feel my emotions through the help of different healers and people that I was working with, it was like every layer that came off me, all the anger, the abandonment, the rage, the guilt, the shame, the grief that just started to wash off me. And then I started to just open up to more clarity and understand myself from a deeper level. So, yeah, it was a really deep journey that I took myself on from an early age, but it was so necessary because I don't think I'd be here if I didn't go on that journey.
What were the kind of modalities that you were using for different therapists or healers? What did that
Mm.
look like?
Yep. From an early age, I started working with traditional Māori healers in New Zealand. So basically, they do a lot of like energetic work, but they also
Mm,
do a lot of deep body work, myofascial release.
mm,
So they're getting into your body where the emotions have been held and they're locating them and getting you to become aware of them and then feeling and processing those emotions. You're lying down on the table and they're working on you physically and energetically. And it's not rainbows and butterflies. It's like
mhm,
you're screaming, you're crying. There's a lot of pain that's being, coming out of you. It's quite cathartic. Um, and when you're not used to feeling your emotions, when you've been running and distracting yourself or, like disassociating, in my case, that is quite an intense experience to go through. But every time I went through one of those experiences, I would leave feeling lighter, more
mhm,
like myself, more connected to my heart, my spirit, my inner knowing, my intuition. So, Yeah, it was really powerful for me.
So you went to these different healers, and through these practices and sessions, you did you eventually just kind of adopt your own um, kind of healing practice to do like every day, or how did that evolve into
No,
being at the place where you are now? Because you
yeah,
seem like you've got a good handle on. I mean, there's always layers to this
of
type of
course.
work, and it's almost never ending.
Yeah, layer by
Um,
layer. No, I
yeah.
didn't I didn't develop a daily habit or practice till later on.
hmm
Um, so the early years that I'm talking about, being a teenager, feeling overwhelmed, suffering from anxiety and depression, there was no daily practice. One of the things that happened in my life and my career, when I was 13 years old, I told mum that I was going to be a tattoo artist. So that was a defining moment for me. I remember before my dad died, he gave me a skateboard, and the skateboard had like art of like a skull and some flames. And I just thought it was really cool. I was like, this is the coolest thing. And when he died, I just felt so connected to that skateboard and that art. And I was always drawing before that. Something clicked. My dad had tattoos, something clicked. I just thought, like, I'm going to be a tattoo artist. That's what I'm going to do. Um, and it got cemented in me further. My dad had a brother, and I'd never met his brother before until my father passed away. And he came to the funeral. We rode up on a Harley Davidson, and he was like, I'm your dad's brother, and from now I'm gonna be in your life. And he had tattoos as well. Um, and the reason I bring this up is I think the practice that I was cultivating was drawing. And through drawing, it was a form of meditation that did allow me to kind of process my thoughts, feelings, and emotions from an early age. And then when I started to become a tattoo artist and I got into that career, that was also a way for me to process my thoughts and emotions through tattooing. Because when I'm tattooing, it's like my brainwaves were shifting and I was going into a deeply relaxed state, and
hmm
everything going on around me, I was just zoning out. I was just focused in on this one task that I was doing. And it was a deep meditative state. And I started having deep conversations with my clients as well. And, we were breaking beneath the surface of what was really going on for them and how they were feeling. It's kind of like that barbershop talk, we
hmm
were going deep. And while that was happening, I was also studying different alternative healing modalities, like hypnotherapy or kinesiology or body talk or myofascial release. I was studying that because those are the things that had helped me. Um, so, I was tattooing, I was meeting interesting people, I was traveling all around the world, and then doing a lot of studying. And I think all of that at that at that time, I was just doing a lot of inner work on myself. So it wasn't necessarily one thing, but
hmm
it was many, many things that helped me along my path. But I wouldn't cultivate a deep inner practice, a daily practice till later on.
I know anybody's that sat in a tattoo shop and gotten tattooed for hours, or not even in a shop, but just with an artist. You do connect. Like it's a
Yeah.
very intimate space that you're operating within,
Yeah.
and much of the time, the tattoos that people get have deep meaning behind it that tells a story about who they are on
Yeah.
some level. And in my experience with the few tattoos that I have, I've connected with my artist on that level. So it makes sense that it gives you
Mm,
a space to connect with somebody and get deep, and also
mm,
um, find that presence that you're talking about, that extreme presence with the work that you're doing, your creative expression. I think that's really powerful.
mm. Yeah, that's what it was for me. It just gave me an outlet. And also, I think it gave me getting out of New Zealand for me was a massive blessing, being able to travel
Mm,
and work in different shops and see the world. That kind of broke me out of my bubble. Um, and where I grew up was quite self-destructive. Like a lot of my friends, like I said, had committed suicide or joined different gangs. So that path was always available to me as well. And I think tattooing kind of saved my life in a way because it gave me
mm,
something to focus on that was different to what my peers were focusing on. In a time where I felt really low and I was, super self-destructive, I always had tattooing. It was always a
mm.
focus point for me that, led me down a path of self-discovery and embracing my creativity and expressing myself. So
So as you continued tattooing, when did you make the shift towards what you're doing now? At what point
yeah, so
was
there
that
was just
shift?
continual studying, like for a
Uh-huh.
10-year period, studying different modalities. And then I moved to Bali. And when I was in Bali, I found breathwork. And at that point in my life, I had never done deep, a lot of amounts of breath work. Like I'd been doing meditation for many years, like pranayama, different things,
Mhm.
yoga, but I'd never experienced a deep 1 hour breathwork journey before. So that happened when I was in Bali, and I didn't know what it was. And Hella, actually, my partner Hella, she made me go to this event, and I had a lot of resistance because I was like, I'm already meditating. I already know how to breathe. Like,
Mhm.
what is this? Like, I don't need to do this. I thought I knew better. But I'm
Mhm.
so glad that I went to that experience because that experience literally changed my life. So it was more of like a holotropic breathwork class. For anyone who's interested in breathwork, holotropic breathwork through Dr. Stanislav Grof is he's an amazing man who's created this modality called holotropic breathwork. Anyone can look into it. It's extremely powerful. That was my first experience with breathwork. And it was almost like taking magic mushrooms. I went into this non ordinary state. I cried, I laughed, I released a lot of anger. It was quite cathartic for me. And more importantly, I expanded my awareness out to understand my life, my childhood. I connected to my father in spirit. I felt his presence. I felt him bring through information and guidance for me. One of the things he said was, "You are always good enough as you are, my son. You are good enough as you are." And I hadn't felt good enough my whole life on some level. So my father saying to that, it was very emotional for me. And it just also was a reminder that he's with me and he's guiding me. So it was definitely a really interesting and deep experience, which I didn't think that I was going to have. And when I walked out of that room, I was really mind blown. And I was like, I have to study this modality. I have to understand
Mhm.
it. I have to know everything about it. So that began the journey of studying breathwork and wanting to understand it first and foremost for myself. Um, and I became obsessed with it really. And
Mm.
I just started studying with different schools and learning and soaking up everything that I could and becoming qualified, And yeah, it was such an amazing journey. And that kind of led me to where I am now
Mhm.
and helping and working with other people, cultivating a deep inner practice. Um, and at this point in time, I've been blessed enough to now, like you said, to work with thousands of people all around the world. And it's been amazing. It's been such a beautiful journey. And the journey's just getting started as
Yeah, I
well.
feel
So,
like it has. I feel like in the last couple of years since I've known you,
oh, thanks,
you've been
bro.
on this rocket ship. It's like exponential growth and expansion, which is really awesome to witness.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to take it one step backwards and talk
Mm,
a little bit about your first experience with breathwork and
mm,
just like for people that don't know what
mm,
breathwork is.
mm.
It's a word that gets thrown around a lot. There's a few different people define it differently. How would you
Yeah.
define breathwork?
Well, there's many different types of breath work. There's hundreds of different breath work techniques. So it
Hmm.
just depends on, what type of breath work you're interested in. The type of breath work that I predominantly lead people through is deep 1 hour, guided breathwork journeys. And in these journeys, you access non ordinary states.
Hmm.
You start to work with your limbic system, which is the part of your brain that processes memory and emotion. Um, so a lot comes up. You're feeling your emotions. You're giving yourself time and space to feel what you may have not felt before that might have been suppressed since going all the way back to childhood.
Hmm.
Like you said, we can become really busy or distracted or disassociate. And breath work, the journeys that I lead and my partner Hella lead with Awaken Breath Work, that's a way to really process your emotions and tap into the deepest levels of clarity. Because when you access these non ordinary states, more information is available to you. So it's really powerful and it's something that has to be experienced
Hmm.
firsthand. It's a little bit like taking, psychedelics or going on a plant medicine journey. It's really hard to articulate your experience, but it's a very felt sensory experience on all levels. So,
Yeah, I my first one was with you and Hella,
mm,
and it was a hell of a journey, man. I
yeah,
actually brought my parents were visiting
yeah,
that
that was
that
cool.
time, and they had come to California, and you and Hella were in town, and I was like, hey, I would really like to do this breathwork session with you all. I don't know what's gonna happen. I've never
Yeah,
done this before.
yeah,
Parents are very open minded people, and they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I
Yeah.
was like, it could be healing for everybody, to do it in
Mm,
the same space. And the experience that we had, it was over an hour
mm,
of deep, deep breathing. And
mm.
at first it was difficult, to kind
Yeah.
of find the rhythm and keep that pace um, of breath. And then after a while, you kind of hit a gear. It's almost like you
Yeah.
hit, like you put it in cruise control in fifth gear and you're still going, but it becomes a lot like more effortless.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a vehicle to take you to this non-ordinary state, like you
Mm,
mentioned. And it was a full-on psychedelic experience for me.
mm. Yeah.
Um, I accessed a memory that I didn't know existed.
Mm,
And it was so deeply healing because in the reason why I wanted to bring my parents in, because I was working through my own trauma and relationships. And most people probably, maybe some people can, some people can't relate, but like
mm.
your family seems to trigger you
Oh,
the
yeah.
most. You can
Yeah.
do all the work on
Yeah.
yourself, you can meditate, you can be totally zen. And then once you're put back into the environment that wounded you or you have wounds there, you revert back to the role that you played at that age. So
Yeah.
for me, I was aware now of the role that I played and working through that with my parents present.
Mm,
And in this experience, I accessed a memory of me being in a crib. And
mm,
as you know, sometimes you experience cramping. At least I do,
yeah.
or I did. And you mentioned this afterwards that it has to deal with sometimes control.
Mm,
Sometimes we're holding on to the things that we have deep, deep control issues. And for me,
mm,
that was part of it. I was trying to control my parents or control the way they showed up or have
mm.
these expectations of how they should show up.
Yeah.
And I had this memory of me being an infant, I don't know how old, but very young, laying on my back, looking up, and I see my father um, just peeking into the crib with
Mm,
just the way that you would look at a baby, just pure love and compassion. And
mm,
I felt it. I felt the love from my dad. And my arm, which was completely locked up, solid, like it was cramped like a
mm.
Charlie horse, just completely relaxes and grabs onto his finger in this memory. And then my
Wow.
mother peeks over the crib from this side, and this arm completely relaxes and grabs onto her finger in this memory.
Mm,
But in reality, I was doing the same thing. And in that moment, I just saw them totally differently. And
mm,
it allowed for this deep, deep healing and patience and compassion and understanding. My parents are just two normal and perfect beings
mm.
that love me. And
Yeah.
that's the essence of how they've always interacted with me. It was purely through love,
Yeah.
regardless of what expectation I put on them.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful.
Mm,
And that was just in one session.
mm.
And it uncovered this entire layer of healing for me.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the levels of healing that you've been a witness to in
Mm,
these workshops that you do all across the world, because I've seen them and there are hundreds of people in
mm,
these spaces. How do you hold space for that many people?
It took a lot of work, yeah, to be able to hold space on that level for sure. A lot of like initiations. I
Hmm.
remember the first session, a private session just with one person that I held space for some really intense trauma that they had been through. And I'd never held space for that, level of trauma before. And they went through a deep cathartic release. There was a lot of screaming and wailing. Their body was going through a process of shaking and their nervous system was releasing this old pent up energy. Their eyes were rolling back in their and in their head, and they were choking, and it was just really intense for me. But we were able to move and process that energy. Um, and from that moment forward, it was like an initiation. I was like, wow, I can hold space for that level of trauma. I know what to do in that now. I know that I can sit in that and have the knowledge and the awareness to help that person through that. And the more you do it, the more you understand and the more you learn and the more you studied. And I studied with different modalities that kind of
Hmm.
empowered me um, and gave me different tools that I use. It wasn't just breath work. So I think all of that's led to us being able to hold a really safe and empowering space. Also, my partner, Hala, she's an absolute Jedi. She's a wizard.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
she's just constantly studying and qualifying with different modalities. It's almost her obsession. She just loves it. Um, so together, we've just been able to come to a place where we've created these events and workshops where we lead people through these experiences. And it's just a really tight and safe container where everyone shows up, maybe not even aware of what's going to happen,
Hmm.
but they're willing to go there. They have the willingness to be curious about what wants to be felt and what wants to be processed. And in that environment, we can create such a powerful container of healing because all you need is that curiosity, that openness,
Hmm.
and then we get to find out what's there. And that's been my experience with that. But the events have been so mind blowing because
Hmm.
we know it's not me and Hella healing people. Like everyone is their own healer in that room, and that's what you get to experience. It's a direct experience of transformation and healing. And it's so powerful because it's a somatic therapy. We're getting beyond talking, we're moving beyond the mind, and we're moving into the body and allowing the body to process, the
Hmm.
unexpressed and the suppressed emotions. And when you give yourself permission to do that and you have the tools and the knowledge, then you can literally create vast amount of healing rapidly. It's so profound how much you can heal in one session.
Hmm.
And especially when you're in a group of people that are doing it at the same time, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, I feel like doing it around other people, as vulnerable as it is, like you mentioned earlier, people shake, they scream, they
Yeah.
cry, they laugh hysterically. It's
Yeah.
like with all of these very intense emotional releases happening, and you hear it and you're in the presence of it, and it almost gives the other person permission to go further. Because
Yeah.
how often do people find themselves trying to maintain composure, trying to
Yeah.
not show any signs of weakness or vulnerability?
Yeah.
Because most of us have maybe self-taught, or the stories that we've told ourselves is that we can't, it's not safe to do that.
Yeah. Most
We
definitely.
Yeah,
Safety is a huge thing.
yeah, it's hard to find a safe environment, even with the people that you love, sometimes to be that open and vulnerable,
Yeah.
because you've never been allowed that space and given that permission, or given yourself the permission to actually just feel it and just let it out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So true.
I'm sure what you've seen and witnessed so many times is that when you do bottle it up and you do stuff it away and try to maintain it, it finds a way to show up in patterns in your life,
Mm,
and maybe subconsciously you don't know
mm.
why you keep finding yourself in these similar positions or similar thought loops.
Most definitely.
And this space gives you room to expand and, like you said, broaden your awareness of what's going on internally.
Yeah, well, most of us don't know what we're like the subconscious patterns, right? That are limiting us or holding us back from creating the reality that we actually want to because they're all unconscious.
Hmm.
Our inner programming or our childhood programming. They say the subconscious mind makes up anywhere from 95 to 97% of the mind, so that's a lot. Like a data bank of information of everything that you've ever been through has been, held in the subconscious. So, yeah, a lot of us are unaware of that. But like you said, it is showing up and self sabotaging. It is
Hmm.
showing up and, holding ourselves back. A lot of us feel unworthy or unsafe, or we feel like we're not good enough, or we're afraid of other people's judgments, or whatever the case might be. But we're holding ourselves back from going after what we truly want in life. A lot of us know what we should be doing,
Hmm.
but we're not doing it. And that's all of that subconscious programming, our inner beliefs that are holding us back. So you get to work through that in a session. You get to become aware of your subconscious programming, the areas that you're holding yourself back. You get to look at it, you get to process it, you get to feel it, you get to move those emotions and energy from the past. It's really powerful. Like one of the things that I find most interesting is the limbic system, the part of your brain that processes memory and emotion because it processes the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. It's non-linear. So a lot of us are overlaying, past experiences, past highly charged emotional experiences that we've been through, which we've all been through. If we haven't processed those experiences, they're still being held in the body, and we overlay them into the present moment, and we all know what it's like to be triggered by something in the present, but a lot of us
Hmm.
it's not just the present moment. We're overlaying all that baggage and all of that stuff, and that's affecting the way that we're showing up in our relationships, or the way we're showing up in business, the way we interact with different people, our relationship to money, our relationship to ourselves. It's all of there. But the cool thing is that just like we can overlay the past and the present moment, we can also condition our bodies to the future that we want to create in these breathwork sessions. You can really tap in and see the future that you're creating and feel it like it's already happened and start to call it
Hmm.
in and manifest it into reality. And I think that's another really strong, powerful component of breathwork it's not just about the letting go, it's about the calling in, and it's
Mm-hmm.
about connecting to higher levels of creativity and understanding and, you know, what you really came here to create and do, and just getting clear on your mission.
Mm-hmm. I consume a lot of your content, and I know that you um, advocate, using manifestation and the law of attraction
Mm,
towards first claiming what it is that you want and calling it in. And
mm,
like you said, really envisioning the life that you want to have and the things that you want to create and the person that you want to be, and letting that be the magnet towards calling in your life experience that matches it.
mm,
Um, how have you used that in your life? I would
mm,
love to hear. Do you have a daily practice? And
mm,
I'm sure you have you read like Esther Hicks
mm.
or any of
Yeah,
Abraham Hicks
yeah, yeah,
publications?
yeah. I've
Yeah.
been to her live events as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
It's
She
powerful.
calls it the workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you have a workshop?
I love it. I do. Yeah, I do. So yeah, every day I do a daily breathwork practice called Awaken Daily. And if anyone wants to try that, it's a 5 minute breathwork practice that Hella and I created, and you can try it for free. All the information's on our website, awaken.com. And this practice is a practice of deepening your connection to your intuition. So you do a breathwork sequence and practice for 5 minutes. Then you tune into the question, what does my inner guidance want me to know right now? And you allow yourself to sit in silence and self reflection and just tune into your own intuition. So I do that, and then I go into a meditation. And in my meditation, usually I'm just allowing my thoughts to process and come to a deeper awareness of how I'm feeling and what's going on for me. And then I start to move into my manifestation practice of really tapping into the future that I'm creating, feeling it, most importantly, seeing it, believing in it, and seeing it like it's already done, working with the law of vibration and the law of attraction and the law of inspired action, and just really allowing myself to tune my body to that reality that I want to create. And it's powerful. I've been able to
Mm-hmm.
manifest many opportunities like that. And I think that we're constantly working with the law of attraction, but a lot of us are just doing it unconsciously. We don't know that we're doing it. But it's always happening. We
Mm-hmm.
live in an intelligent universe where life is always responding to our thoughts and our energy and emotions, constantly. So, yeah, I think it's really important for all of us to take radical responsibility and start consciously working with those universal laws.
I'm a big believer in the law of attraction and manifestation, and taking deliberate action towards your thought. Because, like
Mm,
you said, a lot of what we think is subconscious, and we're constantly broadcasting these subconscious thoughts. We don't even realize that we're thinking
mm,
these maybe self-limiting or disempowering thoughts about ourselves that
mm,
is being reflected back to us in our realities and our relationships, and bringing awareness to those.
mm.
Um, to our thought and bringing intention to it is something that's not often talked about. It's
Yeah.
like we spend years thinking or doing the things that we think we should do, and minutes, spending time
Mm,
really tuning into ourselves
yeah.
and what we actually truly want.
Yeah.
And that requires stillness. It requires work. It
Mm,
requires a practice to get in tune with that. But I am a huge believer of really declaring the life that you want, and then seeing it come to fruition. But oftentimes we're in the way of that.
oh, yeah.
We're in the way of
So
that.
much.
And it's the stories that are so subtle that you can't even listen to them if unless you find the silence and you find the stillness to
Yeah.
hear them. Um, what are some of the most common, like, I would say, like, roadblocks or disempowering beliefs that you've been a witness to
Mm,
with the people that you've worked with that
mm,
inhibit them from getting the things that they say they want, but deep
mm.
down maybe they feel undeserving.
Totally. Yeah. Well, it's our mindset. It's how we feel
Hmm.
about ourselves on the deepest level, because a lot of us are draining our own energy through our thoughts, through the way we're perceiving our reality. Like, my life isn't good enough, or, we're judging certain aspects of our life, or we're rejecting our different emotions or feelings, or the way we feel about ourselves, or we're punishing ourselves, and we're just draining our own energy. And we all know what it's like to be drained by another person, whether it's a friend or a family member, to feel like it's just being drained,
Hmm.
feeling exhausted. But what about the ways we drain ourselves? What about the ways that we don't have our own backs? What about the ways that we disempower, ourselves, and we don't show up for ourselves in a way that we could be. And I think that all comes down to mindset and discipline. And I think a lot of us, um, at this time, it's just important that we take radical responsibility and show up for the things that truly matter to us,
Mhm.
because we're in a time where we can work with these universal laws. Things are speeding up. There's so much negativity in the world. If we choose to put all our focus and attention on that negativity, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware, we should definitely be aware of what's going on, but we should be very aware of how much power we give things. And I think that's very important at this time. And I think bringing it back to self responsibility and looking at where we might be draining our own energy with our thoughts or comparing ourselves to other people is a huge one, right? You like
Mhm.
there's so many people, you know, social media, has so many amazing positive things, but it also has so many, so much darkness and shadows, and it all comes down to how we use it. But just scrolling on your phone and wasting time and comparing yourself to other people, I think a lot of people fall into that trap. And
Mhm.
we can always find evidence. The ego mind could always find evidence for why something could be better, or how we could be further along ahead, or how we could look better, or how we could have more money in the bank account, or whatever it might be. There'll always be evidence of that. And I think when we focus on the negative, we almost it's like we blindside ourselves to all the positive things that we've created in our life, all our blessings, all our wins, everything good that we've got going on. And we kind of undermine everything that we've, been working on or we've achieved. And I think, one of the greatest things that I've seen is just the daily practice around looking at your mindset and looking at self belief and self love is a huge one, right? And empowering ourselves every single day to know that we are good enough, to know that we are right where we're meant to be, that everything is in divine order. And all we have to do is keep showing up, keep putting time and energy and money and, believing in ourselves and creating whatever it is that we're here to create. And knowing that, along that path, there's going to be days where you don't feel like putting time and energy into the thing, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But that's the inner work right there. Those are the days where you should show up for yourself, with a fierce self love and challenge those weaker, more primitive parts of self, like the reptilian brain, that might be in survival or might be trying to hold you back in some way. And just go all the way forward in creating whatever it is you want to create. And I believe that, the inner work is it's not something that we can afford just to do, now and then. It needs to
Mhm.
be an everyday practice. And usually it starts when we're in the resistance. That's when the inner work starts. We can look at that resistance and challenge it from self love.
Mhm. That's beautiful, man. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. Like how do you prevent burnout from doing inner work? Because I mean, with it, comes a lot of emotional
Mm,
um, feelings. Sometimes they can last for days.
yeah.
And you don't have the capacity to continue doing the work. How do you find the balance of allowing yourself to integrate the things that
Yeah.
you learn and give yourself space and time while continually working towards,
Yeah.
towards these healing?
Yeah, I think it's just the balance. It's just listening to your body, and
Hmm.
knowing what's right for you, because the integration aspect of inner work is so important. And you might do a deep session, whatever modality you choose to do, whether it's plant medicines or breath work or hypnotherapy or some other modality that you resonate with. And, you might need a period of integration where you're just taking it very easy on yourself. And maybe you're using meditation or journaling or that self reflection time as a part of your integration. But there's always something that you can be doing. Um, and, I think that just allowing yourself the space to listen to your body, to listen to what's right for you is enough to know, what you need. It's like going to the gym, it's like where you can push it, and where you
Hmm.
need to like give your
Dial it
body
back. Yeah.
time to recover. And I think that listening to ourselves is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves in these moments. Just slowing down, just
Hmm.
listening to our bodies. Our bodies are extremely intelligent. They'll let us know what's up.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. There's an intelligence that resides within us that sometimes we think we can outsmart. And even with physical training, I have to
Mm,
tell my clients, and I have to adopt it too, even when it's hard. I'm like, I have to take a rest day, because if I train with the intensity that I've been training at and
mm,
don't take a rest day or take a couple days off, then it's going to be counterproductive.
yeah.
And
Yep.
that's not going to benefit me or what I'm truly after here. And you know, you you seem to have done the work yourself, but you've also been able to connect with really influential people that um, have like acquired great success.
Mm,
And what is it like being, I'm talking about, if you don't mind me name dropping some of them, just like working with Jake Paul
mm,
and being around that, and witnessing that. Like, what have you learned by being around that type of
mm.
person?
Yeah, just like a really strong work ethic.
Uh huh.
That's the number one thing I think. Using up every, you know, m- moment during the day for something productive. That's what I see with both like Jake Paul and Logan Paul. Their work ethic is just so profound. And I see that with every successful person, right? They just believe in themselves. They believe that it's possible. They have that drive, that work ethic. They're hungry. Um, and yeah, then they're willing to put in the work to create whatever
Hmm.
it is they want to create. And they're not afraid to put themselves out there and do it. So yeah, working with successful people for me has been a blessing because growing up in New Zealand, mum did her best. She was a single parent. I didn't come from money. And there was a lot of
Hmm.
times growing up where we didn't have um, we always had food in the cupboards, but we didn't have like a lot of my friends would get new shoes or different clothes or whatever it might be. And I remember really being envious as a kid and just wanting to have things that, mum couldn't afford to get me. And I've had to work a lot on my relationship with money growing up. It's been a big journey for me. So surrounding myself with people who have really mastered that field of, when it comes to material success,
Hmm.
then that's been great for me because I get to see what is the driving forces behind that and what it takes to be that successful, on both sides, on both the light and the dark. And from that, I get to integrate it into my way of being, into my way of working in a way that resonates with me. So, yeah, it's been a blessing. And it's cool to be out here in Hollywood because there is so many opportunities. And that's one of the reason I moved from New Zealand out to LA, is because there's just so many opportunities out here. And I feel like in Hollywood, everyone's really chasing their dreams. Hollywood has such a dark shadow side to it, but it
Hmm.
also has such a really inspirational side of people going after what they want. Um, and just the work ethic out here is just amazing to see people really hustling from their hearts and going for it.
And achieving it. I think that's the best part
Yeah.
of living out here, is because
Yep.
you come in contact with people that are no older than you, and you're like, wow, you've been able to achieve this in
Yeah, it's amazing.
such a short time. And it's just like, you can take it, one or two ways. You can compare yourself and feel bad about yourself, or you can find it inspiring and be happy that they have success. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big mentality shift that, um, at least, like, I had to learn early on, is like, comparing yourself in a negative way is not going to help you get to where you want to be.
Mm-mm. No.
You can use it as motivation in a way that you can also have access to that. That's also available to you. And
Yeah.
it solidifies that reality and how it is available to you, just by seeing it and being so intimate with it and so close to the people that have already done it.
Most definitely. Yeah. So that's what it's like being for me. I actually lived with Jake Paul for 6 months in his
Hmm.
in the Team 10 house in Calabasas. He's sold that place now, but just living there was an experience. Hella and I lived there and we were just immersed in that. And yeah, it was great. It was like leveling me up. I was like,
Hmm.
he's 24 years old. He's manifested so much material success. I was like, bro, this is insane that you've been able to achieve this like so early on. So it's like so
Hmm.
cool to just tap into that and like you said, get inspired from it and use it as a fuel source to be like, how can I level myself up and my, abundance and my connection to money and because I think like money's got such a bad rap in the spiritual community, but like ultimately with more money, we have more choice, we have more freedom, and we get to create more impact on this planet. So,
Hmm.
for me, like I've always wanted to manifest a lot of money from a young age and not from like the ego mind, but just from a sense of like freedom from being able to do anything that I want to do, from being able to create amazing experiences for myself and other people and put that money into like great places where it's needed. I think that is such an awesome thing. And everyone out there that's chasing their dreams and manifesting and putting time and energy into creating a life that truly inspires them, it's like kudos to you for having the courage to do that, because I know what it's like for a lot of people to project their own negativity or limitations onto you and to make you feel like your dreams aren't worthy, like that you're not capable, you're not good enough of doing that. Because I think a lot of people project their own limitations onto, onto each other. And I feel like everyone that has the courage to chase their dreams, it's like that should be celebrated, because that's not an easy path. You have to move through so much resistance, and there's a lot of inner work that has to take place in order for you to attain that material success.
Hmm. Yeah, and I believe I resonate with what you said about the projection. And oftentimes, I mean, I've heard it plenty of times. It just in my particular domain with fitness and bodybuilding and being a vegan and um, kind of challenging the status quo of that industry, and have heard it every single step of the way that it's not possible. That
Yeah.
it's like it's futile. Like you won't have success.
Mm.
And I've always adopted this approach of if that says more about you than it says anything about me.
Yeah, most
Like it may
definitely.
not be possible for you, and you've only revealed your own limiting belief
Yeah.
about that it's not possible for you, but
Yeah.
that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
And if you can take that approach towards whatever your goal is, um, you know, I think it's a very powerful way of moving through life and understanding
Mm.
that not everybody is gonna like believe in you.
No.
Like, and that's part of it too.
Most definitely, not everyone's going to understand your vision, because
Yeah.
it's not their vision, it's your vision.
Hmm.
So you have to trust your vision. You have to trust that, if that lights you up, if that truly inspires you, then go forward with an extreme courageous self-belief and self-love to know that it is possible for you to create that, because that's your birthright. That's what you came here to do.
Hmm. I love that, man. And you're also a musical artist.
Mm,
I
yeah.
love the music that you're putting out. Any more plans to put out
Mm.
an album or another album? You're on Spotify,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
working on some music at the moment. It's real
Right.
fun. It's just another creative expression where I
Yeah.
get to like, talk my shit, speak my truth.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
real too. It's
yeah,
real, and it's like it's not like I feel like it's hard to balance um like music when it comes to speaking a positive real
mm,
message without it coming across like corny,
yeah. I feel
you
like I
know?
can get to say things in music that I can't say in everyday life. For me, it's another outlet.
Mhm.
It's like a therapy. So yeah, I'm recording a lot at the moment and having fun with it. I'm releasing a song on Monday actually. So yeah, next week releasing a song, and then every week after that I'll be releasing a song
Awesome.
ongoingly. So I'm just wanting to put more time and energy into that, because it's just simply something I enjoy to do. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people, they heal through music.
Mhm.
And I think especially in Australia and other places around the world, there's a lot of people in lockdown. There's a lot of people that can't leave their houses at the moment. And music for me was always a massive way where I connected into self healing. So if I can create any type of music that helps people to create any type of positive change, or connect into self love, then I'm with it.
Mhm.
That's what inspires me. So,
If you could have one person that you would love to collaborate with, who would that be?
oh, that's a good question. Okay, I have to close my eyes for that one.
Let's just call it in.
Let's call it in. Okay. Well, I don't think it's not one person that I want to work with, that I'm calling in. It's more about creating music that actually resonates with the hearts and minds of
Mhm.
people. And my ultimate vision would be like, I'd like to play festivals. I'd like
Mm.
to perform music that's not just music, it's breath work, it incorporates healing, it incorporates light therapy into a live experience that helps people to have their own connection to their higher selves and leave feeling just extremely expanded and open and more connected to love. So I think that's what I'm calling him.
I love that.
Mm.
I'm here to support it. I'm here to help amplify your message, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, man. You're
Mm.
such a beam of light. And I love all the work that you're doing and the way and the strategy that you've been able to do it and connect with highly influential people, because
Mm.
it makes it cool in a way.
Yeah,
You
that's
like
my
it.
whole thing. I want to shift
Yeah.
culture. I want to make healing accessible and cool for everyone to do. Like, if I saw people like Travis Barker and MGK and different musicians doing inner work when I was like, or people that I looked up to when I was young, I would have been drawn to it. I would have been
Mhm.
curious about it. I would have been interested into it. And that's what I want to do. I want to make this, accessible for everyone. I want to shift culture and normalize inner work, because for a long time it's been on the fringe. It's been something that's been done behind closed doors. I
Mhm.
want to bring it, to the masses. And that's always been one of my visions since the day that I found these therapies that really helped me. I wanted to make them mainstream. So one
Mhm.
by one, we're doing it.
Yeah, you're amplifying their messages 100%. And I mean, it's probably immeasurable how much your message and how much ripples you're causing in the world
Mm,
through this. So thanks so much for being on the show,
thank you,
bro.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to you.
Mm.
And if anybody's listening and they want to find out more about Lucas, you've got a few different services that you offer,
Mm.
right? Through Awaken, you do
Yep.
tours. I don't know if you're doing a tour anytime soon,
Yep.
but you
Yep.
also do privates. You do private coaching.
Yep. I do all of that. So you can just go to Instagram, Lucas Mac, LUKISMAC, and also to our awaken.com, and it's awaken with an O. And all our information is there on tour dates and what we're putting out there. So yeah, go check it out. And thanks for having me, bro. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. Anytime, bro. I really appreciate you
Mm.
and everything that you've done. And me personally, and all the help that you've helped me guide through. So if you want to learn more about breath work, if you want to learn some techniques, he has practices on his Instagram, on his website that you can have access to. So give him a follow.
Mm.
You never know what you might learn. And that
Mm.
one perspective shift might truly change the way you live and operate in this world. And I want that for you.
Mm.
You deserve that. You deserve to acquire and to actualize all the dreams that you have, because it's available to you. And
Yep.
sometimes you're in your own way.
Yep.
And that's a
Most
tough
definitely.
that's a tough truth to swallow, but
Yep.
it's also very empowering, because then you realize that all you have to do is get out of your own way and it's available.
Yeah.
So
Let's get it, family.
let's
It's
get
time.
it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to leave a comment. Be sure to leave a review. I would deeply appreciate that. And as always, I am sending you all love and light.